Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, the second hour of this Wednesday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk, the American Family Radio Talk Network. We're going to get to healthcare updates and going to get to the shutdown fiasco here in just a minute. But we were talking in the first hour about a California appeals court that ruled that spanking itself is not a form of child abuse. If reasonable force is used, if there are justifiable circumstances for it, it is not a form of child abuse. It's an appropriate expression of a parent's desire to love his child and to shape his character. And I mentioned in the course of talking about that court case how out of control Child Protective Services can be. Not in every case, certainly. I'm not painting with a broad brush here. I'm not saying it's true in every case. I'm not even saying it's true in most cases. What I am saying is there's tremendous potential for abuse in the Child Protective Services system, the way it's set up now, because parents can lose their kids based on an anonymous complaint. They have no idea who made the complaint. They have no idea what the complaint was about, and yet their kids can be taken from them, and they are virtually helpless to resist. Anyway, we have Sarah from Tyler, Texas with us on the phone, and she's got her own story about what happened, her experience with the Child Protective Services in California. So, Sarah, go ahead and pick up where you left off and give us the rest of the story.
Okay, thanks for having me. I've actually never called a talk show before, so this is very new to me.
Well, thank you for calling, and you're doing absolutely great.
Okay, thanks. Well, I just wanted to let you know, yes, I believe CPS has way too much power, and a huge example would be my story. I am a Christian, but when I was a teenager, I was definitely a wandering, searching Christian, still trying to find what was right and what was wrong in my place and where God wanted me to be. And, I made quite a few mistakes, and one of those mistakes was I did get pregnant when I was a teenager. And my pregnancy, I was 19. My pregnancy was very difficult, and I had a very high-risk pregnancy where I was in bed rest pretty much the whole time. And pretty much everything that could have gone wrong in that pregnancy did go wrong. I had my daughter very early at 31 weeks, and she was only 1 pound and 13 ounces when she was born.
Wow.
She was very, very tiny. And she was in an incubator. She was in the NICU for several months before she was allowed to come home. When she did come home, she was only 4 pounds.
Wow.
And she had what the doctors referred to as failure to thrive, which is she was very small, and she was having a hard time gaining the weight that she needed to gain in order to be healthy.
Right.
From the time she was born, she was very tiny, but she, as far as her progression, as far as, being able to talk, being able to walk and crawl and sit, she did very well. She just looked like a tiny version,
Mm-hmm.
very, very tiny version of a baby that could do all those things. Well, when she was about 8 or 9 months old, she was actually walking. She was an early walker. She was just very tiny, and I'm sure it looked very bizarre. But I had a very good doctor in California in the Bay Area, very, very good doctor I was taking her to. And she was being seen at the doctor twice a week. She was being weighed, and we had her on a special diet. I was basically doing everything I was supposed to be doing, taking her to the doctor twice a week, getting her weighed in. And she was gaining weight very slowly at her own pace, but she was gaining, and it was encouraging. Well, there was one day I was actually living with a lady. In exchange for room and board, me and my daughter had our own little room. I took care of her. She had lupus. I took care of her, and one day a police officer and a social worker showed up at the door. And because of an anonymous phone call, someone had said that my daughter looked very small, and she just wanted her checked up on. And I had no idea. They said, "Can we please come in?" And I just, I had nothing to hide, so I let them in. I was like, "Sure, go ahead." And they came in. They took one look at my daughter, literally one look, asked me to come with them down to the station. And I asked them, "Is there something wrong?" And they said, "No, we just want to ask you a few more questions at the station." And then at that time, I was getting my daughter ready, and they said, "Oh, well, she's going to ride in the car with the social worker." Okay. And so I rode with the police officer, and during this whole time, I'm young, and I was just doing what they told me to do. I started to get a little scared, but I was just doing what they told me to do. And by the time I got to the police station, they put me in a little, like, holding cell type deal.
Wow.
I sat in there for 2 hours waiting for someone to come talk to me.
Wow.
Finally, a police officer came and talked to me, and I asked him where my daughter was, and he took one look at me and said, "You're lucky if you're ever going to see your daughter again."
Oh, my gosh.
She was put into the foster care system the very next day.
Oh, boy.
And I fought very hard. I lost it when he said that to me. It was just my entire world fell apart.
Wow.
And I found out what happened. The CPS worker came in. They determined right then and there that my daughter was too small. Obviously, I had to be doing something wrong. I told the police officer over and over again, I told him, I said, "Look, I have medical records that I will show you. I have all these medical records. Call my daughter's doctor. Do this, do that. I have all this proof. My daughter has these problems. I'm doing exactly what I need to do." And they wouldn't even look at them.
Wow.
Until I got an attorney, until I went to court a couple weeks later, got an attorney. I finally got an attorney who fought so hard for me, but it took 4 months for me to get my daughter back.
4 months.
4 months.
And how much money?
During that time, she was put through 2 or 3 different foster homes where she did not gain weight. She actually ended up losing weight.
Wow.
They put her in the hospital. While we were in court, CPS told the judge that they believed that I had Munchausen's by proxy, which, they're pretty much doing their own little diagnosis there. They told him that I thought I was starving my daughter to death, all sorts of things.
Oh, my gosh.
They recommended she be put in the hospital. And what's funny is when they put her in the hospital, I can't imagine the trauma that they put my daughter through.
Yeah.
But she was put into a hospital.
How old was she? How old was she at the time?
She was 8 months.
Wow.
8 months old. They put her in the hospital for 2 weeks. They put her on a feeding tube, and she did not gain any weight at all.
Wow.
Probably because she was stressed out.
So
but finally, after the 4 months was up, they said, "Okay, due to the fact that she's not gained any weight, this is unfounded," and they just gave her back to me. Literally, just one day, case was dismissed. Go
and you
pick
got her
up your
back.
daughter.
Have you ever heard from them again?
No.
How much would you mind sharing how much it cost you in legal expenses to get your daughter back?
I was actually fortunate enough to be assigned an attorney by the state.
Okay, so
I did not have to pay for my attorney.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate your story very much. Thank you for taking time to share that with us. It's a gripping story, Sarah, and I'm afraid it's all too common. And it's amazing what happened to Sarah and her daughter, a little 8-month-old girl being put through that, yanked away from the only security she knows, the only mom that she has in the world, from the stability, the comfort, the protection of that, shuffled around from one foster home to another, placed in a hospital, stuck on tubes, her fate being decided by these absolute total strangers who do not care for her, at least anywhere near to the degree that her own mom does, Sarah does. So it's a shameful thing, and the fact you'd have to go to court and still not be able to took 4 months to get her daughter back. It's just shameful. And so it's time for us to have get back to some kind of semblance of balance and rationality here. Well, Sarah, thank you for calling, and God bless you. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be right back.